doesn't affect you as an individual. No, other members of parliament will be dragged into this. For example, right now we have a split between members of parliament. People who are supporting, Honorable Zakir Francis. We also have people who think that impeaching him is a wrong idea. That alone already is a difference that has been created by some of the things that he said on social media, some of the attacks that have been happening between him and and the Deputy Speaker of Parliament. So all that, eventually, it gets back to you, your morality as a person. Last week, we were talking about how people were raised. Honestly, I don't want to say that this is it, but again, it tells you much more about that, okay? And also, you as, a member of Parliament, it reflects you in a totally different way in the eyes of public. And you should know that when the public gets involved in such cases, it's going to become an emotional topic. All right.
Well, Felix, Philo rightly threw light into that conduct definition and the expectations of a honorable member of parliament. Well, we've seen this in the CA, the previous about 2-3 parliaments. We do not have such conduct. And this brings me to ask, today we have social media. We have seen a number of attacks from various members of parliament, one to one another, on media, everywhere. Who will forget when we saw martial arts at its best in parliament? You remember? And one would wonder, are these members of parliament throwing around mics, boxing, kicking? So this is where we've gotten to. But let's understand, how have we arrived at this? Where the August House, I remember when I was still in school and you used to have these debating clubs. But if that day you were a honorable member of parliament, even the way you laugh, the way you clap, you just stamp. So there is a way they were preparing us that this is what should be. And you'd even come and tour parliament, that's where the speaker sits. Go and see how these intelligent brains of the nation are conducting themselves, whether they're agreeing or disagreeing. Of late, we're seeing the opposite, that a member of parliament can go to social media, member of then blast, speak anything. A member of parliament, some go to extreme ways of serious verbal artillery on various platforms. Yeah. So why have we gotten to this?
First and foremost, Robert, as my sister Philo did clearly elaborate on the definitive appreciation of the word honorable, I may seek to addend this onto her submission, that the word honorable does come from honor. Honor, to honor. Now, unfortunately, the qualification of the word honorable is the one that has been belittled. It is unfair for someone to be called honorable because they are members of parliament. That's very unfair to some of us who love grammar and language. I find that was quite a cheat. Parliament cheated us in that.
Don't you think it's us maybe who lowered the standards for the qualification?
No, it is Parliament that cheated us because they are very selfish.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't get someone who can't speak, and by speak, I don't mean English, speak. Someone who can't communicate. Because between you and me as a journalist and senior, to it, you know the purpose of communication, that a message must be given, heard and understood. How many of members of parliament can do that? Now, the reason why you see all this hullabaloo is because your so-called honorables are not communicators. Every time someone has a weakness, they tend to cover it in a disguise. If you've ever had an argument with someone who has no issue to argue about, they're always quick to abuse and shout.
Even fight.
Absolutely. They become physical. Sometimes it goes to the extreme. Because they have nothing to say. The problem with members of parliament, some of them are not communicators. They don't have the brain. Now, one of the reasons why someone can't communicate is either they have nothing to communicate, and clearly most of them have acquired nothing to communicate. Why? They're never in parliament. Some of them didn't go to school. For those, some of them went to school, failed. Others are not interested in politics, but look at it as a business opportunity.
You
know all these things, Robert. Now, the failure of the institution subscribers or members to communicate brings about that. If you have an issue against Kirabo, the speaker or deputy speaker, call a press conference in your capacity as honorable member and communicate your dissatisfaction. For example, my name is Honorable Felix Nkunda. I represent the people, the of Rubaga South. I have an issue with the deputy speaker in regards to A, B, C, and D. And this arises from A, B, C, and D. And because of this, I have come to communicate to my probably constituents, to community. Now, because they have nothing in order to say, they resort to insults. Now, let's go back a little. Between you and me, time has over again proved that small minds, mediocre minds, don't have time to discuss issues. They always clutter their jazz or their conversations in bubble drums. Mulugana tukuita kusabuka. Because they have nothing to. And that's a common practice. Now, that has worked for many politicians. The absence of communication skills has been used by politicians as a tool of trade for being good politicians. And guess what? Many electorates in this country appreciate bad communicators as good politicians.
Very true.
If you cannot abuse Kirabo, you're not doing anything.
Someone will tell you, akasajja kavuma.
Tukawaka
kagenda kabavume kabatabule.
What's the relationship between poor communication and representation? Honestly and truly, what's the relationship? How do you stand under the sun to vote someone who is good at insulting other people? That's why I love the fact that you brought a comparison of the CAs. And we can also borrow a leaf from other parliaments. I don't think it's only Uganda that has a parliament. All other countries have representatives. But let's get to the roots of representation. And that's where honor comes from. That's where the honor should come from. That Kirabo has represented Machindye for the last 10 years. Honorably. That now, and let me tell you, when you go to some of these villages, you may leave Kampala, some of these villages, you find that people look up to what you're going to say. Kati, let's imagine people who are agricultural. There's all this debate about coffee. Everyone is waiting to say, what will my representative talk about? The coffee issue. Me, the coffee, a grower. People in the agriculture sector. Everyone is waiting. Let's say the people who are the vendors in Kampala, they're saying, what will Muhammad Nsereko say about this issue? Yeah? The borders who are in Kampala, what will you say? And then you can start abusing. The honor comes from good representation. The greatest mistake this parliament has done to you and to Ugandans is making it automatic. That every honorable will be called or a member of parliament will be called a honorable. So, for us to define that statement, we must go back to the purpose of representation. Someone must qualify that.
Felix well explained actually why even we've gotten to where we are. But the apple does not fall far from the tree. And I also now want us to go back to the electorate. When I was speaking with Professor Ogenga Latigo, I think that was when Parliament was making 100 years. He was in Parliament for some time. He was the leader of opposition. And in my opinion, he was one of those most successful leaders of opposition. But he told me even before you go to blame the members of Parliament, we were discussing quality of debate, quality of members of Parliament. He told me, let's go back to the electorate. He said, if they have chosen to give us that, that is what we are going to get. He gave me a constituency I want to mention, because I may be tempted to mention the names, but he said in a certain constituency, there were 5 candidates. They had one, you would say, this is a professor, understands what you're going to. They had a lawyer, and he told me they had a senior 6 dropout who was well known for being notorious, very funny, abusive, and all this. And they chose to vote this person. So he says, when we refer to quality, discipline, all these, we should look at the electorate, because these are the people they chose. They choose, even when you have a class A, they would go to class D.
Well, first of all, that's really very absurd for us to actually leave all the ideal options that would probably execute these duties and responsibilities in a much more respected manner. And you decide to, I want to call it lower your standards, maybe, you leave class A and you go for class D. I mean, that alone even says a lot about your judgment as an individual. But anyway, for starters again, you would wonder why you go for an option like that, because I don't know whether this is supposed to be impressing a certain group of individuals or a certain group of people. And again, I think we don't understand what some of the responsibilities, some of the duties, you know, that are supposed to be executed by these people, even maybe members of the electorate. Yeah. So you decide to go for the other person because he makes more noise. You feel like that is how he's delivering a point. That is how he's going to be executing what he's supposed to be doing. But we need to understand, even we as Ugandans, we've seen this in several constituents. Look at it during the election period. I don't know if you've noticed, but usually the people that vote want the person who speaks most. They don't even care what is actually coming out of the mouth. They will think this one will be able to go and cause havoc. This one will be able to, you know, to go to parliament and drive case.
So formidable resistance.
All this, that is what they believe in. But also I want you to sit down and think so hard. They have talked, they have made noise. What has come out of it?
They have talked, they have made noise, what has come out. This is why I also want to bring in Felix. Let's look at the laws. For example, I know when members of parliament, actually, I remember the Right Honorable Speaker by the end of the 10th Parliament, Rebecca Kadaga, said it is very ashamed that even when we call upon them for induction, you know, you've been elected, you're sworn in, come for this induction so that you get to know when you're drafting our rules and procedures, come and let's understand how best you should conduct yourself in such an institution you've come up. Let's look at the rules that maybe bring sanity. For example, some of them are almost next to impossible. I was looking through, that is Rule 110 of the Rules and Procedures of Parliament in case you're to impeach Zake from being a parliamentary commissioner or a back-bench commissioner. And they tell you, first and foremost, you need to have 1/3 of the members of Parliament, just even when you have this idea. So you inform that is the clerk to Parliament, who write to the sergeant at arms, then they pin all names of members of Parliament, and those that feel this is a motion that should go ahead, pen their signature. But now for the current parliament, you need at least 178 members of parliament to have done so. Then from there, it will go, it will go for debate. And there you need about, with the current parliament of about 527, you need 264 members to vote that this person should be removed. But it's a lengthy process. Go to constituencies. It is almost impossible for any member of parliament, once elected, to be removed by the voters themselves before his term of 5 years expires and he has to go back for another vote. Because how are you going to get 1/3 of the signatures of people that voted for you? So the law itself, don't you think, also creates a fertile ground for maybe some of these members of parliament to act in unbecoming mannerism because they know they are guaranteed, maybe it is next to impossible, to take action against them?
Yeah. Well, it will be much easier for us to sit here and blame the law. But every time I have conflict between law and myself, I always choose my values. And that's how I've been able to thrive through some situations, even when it comes to work. Because before you are whatever you are yourself. Now what do you live for? This directly speaks back into the caliber of legislators that are in the August House in relation to age, qualification, exposure, experience, and purpose. In relation to the same, what is the style of politics in this country? I don't think there's a politician who stands in righteousness if we are to discuss that. You understand? Or even just from the rules, because the rules come in much later. Because the idea is that whether or not Zake is censored, does that answer all the questions around the demeanor and the behavior of members of parliament?
Sometimes when a precedent is set, it can be deterrent.
Members of parliament have been beaten on plenary. What did that do? They've been beaten. You know what beating means? What did it do? You get it? Most of them have been arrested. I think the opposition members have been in and out of prisons many times. If that's not enough, you think censoring is enough? Some of them have been thrown out of parliament through court processes, and you understand? I think we must try to redraw what we want out of this arm of government. Clearly, up till today, we have lost path. What do we want out of parliament? Do we know what we want? What are our expectations out of? Now, that will help us know who should be in parliament. Because we are having the wrong people in parliament because we are having wrong reasons. Just in the last election, you saw people were saying, if we shall vote this sign, we shall know the people later. Just stick. Are we voting for the right reasons? Now,
but also that brings in another question, Felix. Even do we know
the purpose
of the
August House?
Of the August House.
Absolutely.
And you have a member of parliament who will go and deliberate very well. If you look at the answer, he has dominated that. The rankings is doing very well. And come an election. No, let me not use the word I wanted to use.
Let me tell you.
We'll defend that person. No, and the voters
and I'll tell
are not bothered. They'll tell you, Azika.
Robert, let me say this. If you look at the three arms of government, which would you say is the best performing? Just maybe between the three of us, in your opinion. We have the executive, the judiciary, and the parliament. Which one is performing? You say, Yadeko.
Judiciary.
To Robert, how about you, Phil?
I actually agree with you, judiciary.
Now, it is the worst. It is the worst sponsored. It is the worst what?
Sponsored.
In terms of budgetary allocation. It receives the least, doesn't even receive quarter of what parliament receives. You understand now the dilemma. Now, what parliament receives is an incentive that gives morale to people to do anything to be there. Imagine, Robert, if you're getting about 50 million shillings a month. Plus a car, plus airtime, plus your socks about, your handkerchiefs about.
Even when you die, you are sure.
And you don't have to attend by the for a year. Even if you don't attend for a year.
Come, I sign, I go.
Yes.
What a job.
That kind of hullabaloo, if you might call it, that kind of stampeding, that kind of, you know, it is what we call mediocrity. The institution is a mediocre institution because of how it has crafted the bedrock. The foundation is shaking. You understand? So even, that's why you see some members will come out, and because the foundation is shaking. And I can give you 1 billion examples that are evidence to the shaking foundation of the
But for me, Felix, yes, time is not so much. But for me, there is one thing that comes to my mind. Even when we talk about the foundation, have read, have spoken to people. Recently I was speaking to Haja Mukwaya, Abe Mukwaya. And you would see that these people, even many of them in their times, not even exposed as the current members of parliament we have. Some were coming from the bush, they came, they drafted the CA, and those that followed. Still not so much changed. But these people, their times...
But I think also didn't do enough.
Their times
I'm starting to feel like they didn't do enough, and I'm going to have this conversation with some of them. But because if they had done enough, maybe we wouldn't be where we are.
Wouldn't we say it's the effect of a lost generation?
No, no, stop blaming the generation. Who has passed on to the generation?
Because you ask yourself...
Did this generation come from a plantain?
Look at the problematic characters.
We are children of these people.
No.
I think they people didn't pass on. Because when you say that a member, what you want to call honorable, would be an S6 dropout. I'm not attacking people who didn't get an opportunity to get
many of
higher
the
than that.
previous ones.
But before, what are they expect? Because you must look at what do you expect out of this person for you to determine the standard. That's why when you say, if someone, let's say someone to work on national broadcaster who goes on air, they should have maybe minimum, because the expectation out of this person is this. Now, what do you expect out of members of parliament to say that they should come from S6? Are you bringing people who are chicken breeders, or what is the expectation? You're going to talk about budgetary allocations, international relations, category S6. I don't know if you understand.
Well, one man once said the elite have done nothing, if any, for this country compared to...
But for some institutions, then let me ask you, why do you think when they are choosing, for example, permanent secretaries, they don't choose S6 dropouts? There's need for education and technicalities at some point. At some level, you need technical.
So, Felix, well, this is very interesting. If we were to look at a case of points, to be more specific, the people we've seen, the notorious characters in parliament, those that have really behaved in some unbecoming mannerism in public, you will be shocked when it comes to academic qualification. So they are not in tandem in any way regarding the academic qualifications. So then what best explains this? Of course, I have from their mandate as members of parliament. Yes. But in terms of issues of discipline, morals and behavior, education does not qualify.
When you hang around the barber shop for so long, you definitely get a haircut. You remember how they used to tell us in school? But the same...
They flock together, they have a way of rubbing off on you.
Absolutely. Even if I'm educated and I rub shoulders with Kirabo for 2 years, Kirabo's somehow.
It rubs
and
off
most of the time,
character.
it's normally the negative that pulls harder than the positive. It's hard for these guys who are educated to assist these people. Rather than you'll see a senior member of parliament, and you're like, okay. So it's
Phil, just less than a minute.
Well, I think Parliament as a government institution actually needs to go back and figure out what it is they want. If they have a criteria that they follow. I mean, if you're vetting all these people, there are certain standards they need to be meeting, okay? And also it needs to come from like a personal point of view. Like aside from the qualifications, like you said, somebody can have these academic qualifications, but the way they act is absolutely not in any way related to their qualifications. So you just need to look at what is the what is their intent to join parliament? We had several members of parliament, I think it was last, the 10th parliament, one specific member of parliament came out and said, me, I'm just here to make money like the rest of these other people. I can't contribute because I don't know English. Yes, exactly. He did say you can't have a member of parliament come out because it makes us look bad as a country. Then
the next was unfortunately that phrase did not get him back to parliament. But for me, I'll go back to the electorate. Sometimes we play around with our vote. We think it is just something we should just do. It is time, if we want justice, effective laws, service delivery, to treasure our vote and think twice before casting it. This, just going by the bandwagon, it is so nonsensical to us Ugandans. This is why we're having some of these issues. At the end of the time would be spent debating issues of national interest. Now you see members of parliament are divided hands, don't do that, don't do that. It goes back to us. Because for them, they'll always crave to go there. Who wouldn't want to be a member of parliament in this country with all these allowances? Felix, you're not being an honest man. Anyway, let's return with the print media. Good morning.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite shows.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Patriotism is a feeling of love, devotion, and the willingness to sacrifice for one's country.
I say no to corruption because I put my country first. I choose peace over violence because I put my country first.
I love Uganda. I serve Uganda. I sacrifice for Uganda. I'm loyal to Uganda. I love myself.
Be patriotic. Uganda first. This message is brought to you by the National Secretariat for Patriotism Co-Uganda, Office of the President.
You know, you could just buy a new smartphone from anywhere in Uganda. Dial *175 *94 hash to activate their 100% double data bonus offer on weekly or monthly bundles for 3 months. Better yet, you automatically receive free 1 GB valid for 30 days. You are hooked already, aren't you? Enjoy a 100% double data bonus from Airtel. Buy a smartphone from anywhere in Uganda and insert an Airtel SIM card. Dial *175 *94 hash to activate a 100% data bonus offer on weekly or monthly bundles, valid for 3 months. Dial *175 hash and select your preferred bundle to activate a 100% data bonus offer on weekly or monthly bundles, valid for 3 months. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, now into the papers and looking at the big headline, how parish model cash will be shared. Now in the Daily Monitor, how people was killed in city school fire, quite sad and very, very emotional there. Now, of course, deco trends that will dominate 2022. Lord Mayor Lukwago names owners of all taxi park plots, and MV Kalangala suspends operations for repair. Now, still inside the paper, Hassan Malema Birizi, police in Kampala on Monday did arrest the city lawyer. Now, yes, Lukwago also the Lord Mayor. Monday said businessmen who claim to own plots in the old taxi park do not deserve to be compensated because they never carried out any developments on the land. Now, still in the same, we have an archive here, quite a photo of baptizing some of the Seventh-day Adventists there. Now, Amin meets Princess Bagaya's mother today in history, and children receive first polio vaccine in Uganda.
This morning we'll look at probe team proposes tax on idle land, and of course Bamgemerere team says revenue will spur economic use of land, and also Majezi gives out some of the tips on how to access these parish development model funds, and also New Vision share price recovers by 180% at use, and city landlords demand billions for old taxi park plots. And in the big picture there, you can actually see that the Uganda Nurses and Midwives Examinations Board have made sure that these examinations commence, and we can only hope that the best of the results will be seen. And on the second page of the New Vision, we also look at how to raise money for business via capital markets. Now, this is part of the opportunities in business, and we also take a look at today in history after first textile consignment was flagged off, and also looking at Osama declares jihad against Jews. And also we look at a very touching picture there of a mother showing some love, or a son showing some love to his mother, and not forgetting the COVID tracker.
Now, still in sports, the Daily Monitor, FIFA altered dates for Ghana-Nigeria World Cup qualifying showdown, and UEFA Champions League. UEFA are exploring a contingency plan to move this season's Champions League final from St. Petersburg amid concern over the possibilities of war between Russia and Ukraine. now wild card for Rugumayo there. That is in, of course, golf. And also Aziz Damani lifts their 2019 league crown. But also Akiro Floating Cranes return with move to US Amateur League. Now De Gea releasing return to Atletico Madrid.
Adding to the new vision, sports, are male coaches better? Well, you want to find out answers to this, get yourself a copy of the new vision. And also former Cranes defender Godfrey Walusimbi speaks out and says, we were assured of winning. The full story goes all the way to the second page. And also we look at silverware for Kasidie and Team Uganda women, and some tough choices out there to make. And also looking at sports science is a must, which is an opinion from Hope, a sports analyst. And also taking a look at rugby riding on banter. All this, make sure you grab yourself.
Well, of course, something something very different, beautiful here. I saw inside the Daily Monitor. Probably that's why I rushed to come to you. It's called the Homes and Real Estate. Pull out now. They give you decor trends that will dominate 2022 and how to do decorate your. Probably they have, for those who have balconies, your sitting room, how not to have it congested. But of course, how to choose an architectural design for your project, what to look out for. And of course, they give you some of the tips that you need to have a very nice and beautiful dining set, kitchen cabins there. Now, items to read kitchen off immediately. Why do you have your kitchen congested, and how do you decongest your kitchen? Now, flowers, bushes that give your garden a good texture. What flowers to look out for? Are there any particular flowers you love, Philo?
Oh yes, I love lilies.
What's that?
I love lilies. It's a type of flowers. I don't know whether you know that, Felix, but
apparently I don't. But I know there are snowbush, that is Mona lavender, crimson red castrum, milkweed, roses, pentas, lantanas. I tell you. But anyway, let's look at the Daily Nation. What's in the headlines in the Daily Nation? Now, the Daily Nation's a landmark king. Wow. Decision 2022, the war at the president's door. What decisions will he take? What side will he take? And what focuses will he be looking at as, of course, he determines the trajectory of the next leadership of this beautiful country. Much of the story still in all these papers. Be able to hit the streets, get some of these papers, get an insight in what's trending in all the papers. But what else is trending is a poll question, and Philo definitely has some feedback from you guys.
Well, we did ask what are your thoughts on the conduct of legislators in Parliament and public, respectively. Of course, the feedback has to keep coming in, and the number is 0709602592, and you can also send us some of your feedback on our Twitter handle. Of course, the hashtag is UBCGMU. We'll definitely be getting into all that as Good Morning Uganda still goes on all the way till 9 a.m. In the meantime, maybe we take a look at what is happening on the roads this Wednesday morning. It's midweek, so yes, movements are expected from everybody and anybody from and to the city center, you know, to run about different errands and also carry out several other things that you need to do. And this morning, I want to focus on areas of Chisasi, Komamboga, Nkunda, and all the other shorter routes basically around that is Kawempe division. I'll also be looking at some of the areas in Chebando. So if you reside in those areas and you have probably not left for work yet, maybe it's important that you put all this into consideration as you decide to look for some alternatives. Or if you're a very patient road user, maybe you also need to know some of the routes that you need to brace yourself mentally and physically as well. And also make sure that your car is fully refueled or whatever you're using. So if you are coming from areas of Komamboga, Waligo Road is actually a very, very manageable road this morning. You could go through it. There is nothing for you to worry about. But also you need to know that as you go ahead, there will be some traffic buildups that will be expected. As you can see, these orange lines show you that, yes, the traffic buildup is there, but it's shifting, it's moving, so you don't have to worry about being very stationary in a very specific spot on the road for quite a long time. Now, when you go ahead, of course, you can either decide to continue and use the Chebando route, or you could take off from Bahai Road and connect to the Bukoto-Chisasi Road. Bahai Road is very, very free. You can see the green lines. Apart from the few orange spots here, just minor, mild traffic buildups, that shouldn't really worry you. So you go all the way and connect to Bukoto-Chisasi Road. However, if you're coming in from Chisasi, Chanja, I definitely expect you to go through this Bukoto-Chisasi Road. It does have about some orange spots here. Good for us, lucky for us, we don't have any red spots here. So there is nothing for you to cause a little bit of mayhem in your head and also to cause a little bit of confusion in your plans. So you can actually decide to use this route. Be a little bit patient and you will beat this traffic buildup. And of course, it stretches all the way to Bukoto-Chisasi Road. Now, when you get to Bukoto, this main road that still takes you all the way, that is where the issues come in. We have several red spots, as you can see, which clearly tell you that the traffic a bit in these areas is very intense. So we don't know what's there, but at least we know that there are very many people who are parked here. It could be cars, it could be cyclists, it could be border boarders and other pedestrians. Right here, as you can see, this is a very, this is a linking spot for cars and other road users that are coming in from several other parts of several other shortcuts. And of course, looking at Chisota Road. Chisota Road is one of the options that people opt to use as a shortcut. But I think that's why it always has these red spots, because it's a little bit heavy with the traffic. And you can see that morning and evenings, I think maybe because people are heading to work and people are deciding to leave work also in the evening, so they look at it as the best option. So if you always have another plan, I would ideally say that go for alternative B as opposed to use Chisota Road. But again, if you're, as you can see, as you're approaching this link here, where there is a junction, we have cars coming in from Bahai Road, we have cars coming in from Bukoto-Chisasi, we have even cars coming in from Gayaza Road. All that explains why we have these red spots here. So you need to take note of that. And as you can see, still it stretches all the way from here and goes on. We do have some orange spots here, the traffic buildup. So you are shifting from a place that has been stationary, you get into a place that is starting to build up. So the pattern is the same. We see orange here, we see red here, we see orange. So the pattern is really, really more or less the same. You need to expect it. But again, like I already say, you need to be very patient and you pull through. However, you can continue all the way till Chira Road. Now, Chira Road and other shorter routes that are leading still to the same road, we can see some green here, some orange here. The traffic buildup is there because it's a linking point, but also we do have a bit of some heavy traffic here where you see the red spot, so you need to take note of that. Now, when you get to Chira Road, there are very many diversions that you could choose to use to get to the city center. You have several options. You could go all the way Chira Road to Wandegea to Bombo Road, and you get yourself to the city center. Or better yet, you could also decide to take the John Babiha Road, which definitely takes you to Yusuf Lule Road, and eventually you find yourself in the city center. So you're coming from areas of Ntinda, Chanja, Chisasi, Chebando. It's very important for you to note. I could say the road is mildly a bit heavy with traffic, but it's manageable, it's passable. So you just need to exercise some bit of patience. Well, that's it from the traffic updates on this Wednesday morning. But Mollen is here, and she's here to explain the oranges. I'm seeing the greens, the reds, the yes, she's the scientist here. So she'll be doing more of the explanation. Good morning, Mollen, once again.
Yes, good morning. You know, when you see red, you know there is danger.
Absolutely. Red is never good
yeah,
color.
it's not. And literally all we're talking about is drought.
Yes.
And not just here in Uganda, but many places in the world are dealing with this, and that's why there is a lot of danger, concerned with it, because that brings in the effect of fires breaking out. So that's what we'll be looking at this morning, and of course more on what is happening across the world. We're forgetting the forecast.
Well, that really sounds so scary. Just make sure you always look out for the roads in whatever you are doing, because it's never a good indicator. That's it from the traffic updates. I officially hand you over to Mollen to give you more of the climate news and the weather forecast. Have a great Wednesday morning. I am Philomena, Mastiko.
Well, thank you, Philo. And of course, we start off with those red flags. Now, they're not just flags. These are already, areas of danger that have been forecast, and for the likelihood of fires breaking out across many places. We're talking about 2 countries and parts of the Mediterranean, and that is Spain and Portugal. We'll start it from there. Now, there has been a persistent drought across that area, parts of Spain. We've been talking about it in our previous stories, but it seems like now this has gotten to a global concern of the likelihood of fires breaking out at such a large extent. We're talking about Portugal and Spain and parts of the Mediterranean. Now, where you see those orange colors and red, those are the provinces, almost all the areas within southern parts of the province in Spain and parts of the Mediterranean have been forecast to get more of those outbreaks with fires. Now, this is coming in from Copernicus, which does see most of the satellite images that are captured above to see what is really going on over there. Now, it has been, a persistent kind of condition over that area, looking at droughts. And this is why, when we talk about extreme weather events being a problem right now, and especially with, climate change fueling all the events that are happening in terms of changes with weather. Now, this is also coming up at a time when we are also dealing with drought cases across southwestern Uganda. We did have most of the cows dying from the drought that has been persistent also across Ntoroko, and most of the sub-countries that have been most affected. We have Kanara, we have Weramure, that have been battling this since January. And so far, the reports that we actually have are showing that over 15,000 head of cattle have died because of the persistent drought across Ntoroko. Now, this is looking into the fact that we've had extended dry spells from January over that area, and most of these sub-countries, like I mentioned, the Weramure and Kanara, have been having less rains over that area. Now, it's not a normal kind of scenario, because usually, yes, we have that dry weather for the period of January to March, but you also look into the fact that at least we were having torrential rains, and recently we're talking about a reduction in that as well. So that means as the water continues to dry out from the area, then you look at cases like this where we have cows dying from lack of water. And what is interesting is that even such an area that is close actually to the Congo forests, where we did have at least most of the rains coming from that area, we no longer have that. If we're talking about variations in our seasons, it also takes into consideration that even the little rains that we used to have being influenced locally, like I mentioned from the side of Congo, are no longer there. So this is what we talk about when we're talking about extreme weather events likely to result from these climate changes. But you also look into the fact that Ntoroko is actually one of those areas in southwestern parts of the country that have had at least clear seasons over the years. But now we're starting to look into fluctuations, and that is how we're coming up with issues like this. Now, also what the residents over the area are suggesting is at least construction of valley dams, and I agree with that. At least if we had valley dams over the area, you will have better practice, especially when it comes to irrigation, when it comes to, keeping the pasture at least a little bit there for the cows to graze on. So that is one thing that local authorities can look at and be able to help the areas affected cope up with that event. You also look into the fact that they have been battling with diseases like foot and mouth, and that put them into the quarantine. So with that, coupled with the extent of drought, it means people are going to be vulnerable from this kind of weather, and that is something that is concerning. But But also, I think the good news is that we are expecting much rains to come through, but that will be at least early to mid-March. But until then, this is still an issue and concerning. It goes to tell you how much we're looking into when it comes to climate change. Now, it seems like we're having much more of these extreme events. Now, just a few days ago, we also did see landslides in parts of Kabale that were triggered by, heavy rains across the area. Now that was, that image that you shown there, that was across Nteko Road in Kabale, that also had been blocked off by, the landslide that did happen there after a heavy downpour. And we did have at least UNRWA come through to clear some of that from the road, and they were giving us those images. But you also look into the fact that there has been just consistent extreme event after the other. Now, the problem with such rains that come through when it is time for a dry season is that they come in with very extreme, at very extreme capacity, because you've had prolonged dry spells. So when the rains come in, they come in very stormy, and that means they're going to be, involved with heavy rains, strong winds, and that's how we end up with destruction. That's how we end up with flooding, and henceforth creating landslides. So we're going to having much more of this frequency if we are talking about climate variations. And when we call for climate action and as an emergency, when we call for, please regulate our greenhouse gas emissions, make sure that we don't have rising temperatures. These are the likely effects that we're talking about. Now, if you have a country where within just a month you're looking at landslides here, you're looking at droughts over one area, you're also looking at, reduced wet weather conditions, it means that there is a problem. This is happening not just internationally, but also for us here in Uganda, and this is something that has been, concerning when it comes to scientists, for asking government to look more into what this means, because this is not normal, and we've had, a frequency of these extreme events ever since a pre-industrial level. Now, it's on the rise. It's no secret that we are seeing much more of these than we used to deal with before. So that means there is a problem, and if we can do something